1 year after my divorce, I walked into the grand ballroom of the Harrington Hotel and immediately wished I had used the side entrance. Crystal chandeliers glittered above the room like frozen fireworks. Champagne glasses caught the light. Every person from my graduating class seemed richer, louder, and more determined to prove the last 10 years had been kind to them. I hadn't come for the reunion. I had come to take my husband home. But before I could cross the room, a familiar voice stopped me. "Claire Bennett? I can't believe you actually came." Daniel Brooks, the old classmate who had organized the reunion, stepped toward me with 2 glasses of champagne and a smile that was a little too curious to be friendly. "Hi, Daniel." I took the glass he offered but didn't drink. My eyes had already found the center of the room. Evan Foster stood there in a tailored navy suit, surrounded by people who laughed at everything he said. He looked exactly the way he had always wanted to look, successful, admired, untouchable. And hanging on his arm was Chloe Whitman. The woman he had cheated on me with. Now his new wife. Chloe wore a red designer dress, a diamond bracelet, and the kind of smile that said she knew exactly what she had taken from me and expected me to still be bleeding from it. Daniel followed my gaze and lowered his voice. "Evan's company is doing incredibly well. Nexus AI is about to close a huge funding round. People are saying he might take it public in a year or 2. Chloe's family knows half the investors in Boston." "Good for him," I said. Before Daniel could respond, Rachel Lane appeared beside us. Her eyes swept over my dress, my shoes, my face. "Well, well. Claire Bennett. I thought you disappeared after the divorce." "I've been busy." "With what?" Rachel laughed. "No offense, but you were always so quiet. I don't think anyone expected to see you here." The people around us heard that. A few turned their heads. Then Evan saw me. His expression changed for only a second. Surprise, then amusement, then the old arrogance I remembered too well. He crossed the room with Chloe beside him. The little circle around him moved with him, as if success had gravity. "Claire," he said. "Evan." Chloe tilted her head and smiled. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough, I thought." Evan looked me over. "I didn't think reunions were your thing." "They're not." Rachel laughed. "Then why are you here?" Evan's smile sharpened. "Don't tell me you heard I'd be here and came to see me." The room grew quieter. I could feel the old humiliation trying to crawl up my throat, but I held it down. Evan stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it sound intimate, but not enough to stop everyone from hearing. "Claire, we've been divorced for a year. You don't have to keep circling my life. I'm married now." Chloe's fingers tightened around his arm. Then Evan said the sentence he had once used to destroy me. "Let's be honest. You left me, and nobody else wanted you. That's why you're here." The silence was thick. Daniel looked down at his drink. Rachel smirked. Chloe smiled like a woman watching the final scene of a play written for her. I set my untouched champagne on a passing waiter's tray. Then I looked Evan straight in the eye. "You're mistaken." His smile faded. "I'm not here for you," I said calmly. "I'm here to take my husband home." For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Rachel burst out laughing. "Your husband? Claire, since when are you married?" Daniel blinked. "You remarried?" Evan stared at me as if I had just spoken another language. Chloe let out a soft little laugh. "Well. Congratulations. Who is he?" I didn't answer. Rachel leaned closer, enjoying herself. "Come on, Claire. Don't be shy. What does he do? Finance? Tech? Law? Or did you just grab some random guy to make Evan jealous?" Evan shook his head with a sigh that was almost theatrical. "Don't do this to yourself," he said. "It's embarrassing. Then he pulled a business card from his jacket and held it out to me. Look, if you're struggling, I can help. The gold lettering on the card caught the chandelier light. Evan Foster. Founder and CEO. Nexus AI. My office needs a front desk receptionist, he said. It's simple work. You could probably handle it. Consider it a favor. The card hung between us like a slap. For 3 years of marriage, I had cooked for him, supported him, edited his pitch decks, sat beside him through panic attacks before investor meetings, and listened to him call my museum work, cute little history stuff. Now he was offering me a receptionist job in front of the woman he had cheated with. I looked at the card, then at him. How generous. He mistook my calm for defeat. I mean it, Claire. You were never built for this world. There's no shame in admitting that. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Adrien, I'm downstairs. The AI ethics panel in the conference wing ran over. Sorry I'm late. Most people in that ballroom didn't know I had met Adrien Hayes 3 months after my divorce at a preservation technology conference. We married quietly 8 months later, not because I needed a new life fast, but because with him, life finally felt peaceful. The reunion was barely a month after our courthouse wedding. I slipped my phone back into my purse. My husband is here. Rachel folded her arms. This I have to see. I turned and walked toward the ballroom doors. Outside, the night air was cool and clean after the perfume and champagne inside. The Harrington Hotel was hosting a technology summit in the conference wing that same evening. That was the only reason Adrien had agreed to let me pick him up here after his panel. He stood near the fountain, one hand in the pocket of his charcoal coat, his head lowered as he answered an email on his phone. The light from the hotel entrance softened the sharp lines of his face. He looked calm, thoughtful, and entirely out of place among the peacocks inside. When he saw me, his expression changed. Not dramatically. Adrien was never dramatic. His eyes warmed. Claire, he said, tucking his phone away. Did I make you wait? No, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. You came at exactly the right time. He looked past me toward the ballroom. Trouble? An old one. Evan. I nodded. Adrien didn't ask me if I was all right. He already knew the answer mattered more than the question. He simply took my cold hand in his warm one and brushed his thumb over my knuckles. Do you want to leave? I looked at the doors behind me. For years, I had left rooms quietly. I had swallowed insults because I didn't want to make a scene. I had apologized for pain other people caused. Not tonight. No, I said. I want to go back in. A hint of a smile touched Adrien's mouth. Then let's go get you. We walked into the ballroom together. Every head turned. Rachel's laugh died first. Daniel almost spilled his drink. Chloe's smile faltered. And Evan looked at Adrien, then at our joined hands, and something dark moved across his face. I stopped in front of them. This is my husband, I said. Adrien Hayes. Adrien greeted them politely, because that was who he was. He didn't need to be rude to make people feel small. Rachel recovered first. Adrien, nice to meet you. So, where do you work? At Westbridge University, he said. I do research. Rachel's eyes brightened with relief. Oh. A professor? In a way. She turned toward Evan with an amused look. Well, Claire always did like the quiet academic type. Evan's posture relaxed. He looked almost pleased. A professor, he said. That's respectable. The way he said respectable made it sound like poor. Chloe gave Adrien a polished smile. What department? Artificial intelligence. That made Evan pause. Only for a second. Then he chuckled. AI is a crowded field these days. Everyone claims to be building the future. Adrien looked at him with mild interest. Your company works in applied machine learning, doesn't it? Evan's smile tightened. Yes. Nexus AI develops adaptive learning systems for enterprise data. I've read a little about your product, Adrien said. Evan lifted his chin. Then you know we're doing well. Before Adrien could respond, a voice from behind us cut through the room. Professor Hayes. A man in a dark suit was walking toward us quickly, his face lighting up with disbelief. Evan's eyes widened. Victor, he said at once, stepping forward. I didn't know you were here. Victor Shaw, managing partner at Halden Capital, barely looked at him. His attention was fixed on Adrien. Professor Hayes. Victor said, almost breathless. You're Adrien Hayes. The Adrien Hayes. Something shifted in the room. Adrien shook Victor's hand. That's kind of you. Kind. Victor laughed. I attended your keynote at the National AI Summit last year. Your Atlas paper has been sitting on my desk for months. That work practically rewrote the field. Rachel's mouth opened slightly. Chloe went still. Evan's face lost color. Victor seemed not to notice. Half the AI startups pitching us right now are using frameworks that trace back to your lab. Then, finally, Victor turned to Evan. Actually, Evan, your company's pitch deck references several applications of the Atlas architecture. You do realize Professor Hayes is the principal investigator behind that project, don't you? No one breathed. Evan looked as if the floor had vanished beneath him. The Atlas architecture? Daniel whispered. Victor nodded. Professor Hayes is director of Westbridge's Center for Artificial Intelligence and head of one of the most important federally funded AI labs in the country. Rachel took one step backward. Chloe slowly removed her hand from Evan's arm. Evan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Adrien did not gloat. He did not even smile. That made it worse. His indifference was cleaner than any insult. Victor turned to me. And you must be Mrs. Hayes. Claire, I said. Claire, he corrected warmly. Professor Hayes mentioned your preservation project during the panel tonight. AI-assisted restoration of damaged manuscripts, wasn't it? I blinked. Yes. Rare manuscripts, historical letters, and weathered inscriptions. That is exactly the kind of cultural technology work our foundation has been trying to support. Victor pulled out a card and offered it to me. Not to Evan. To me. When you're ready, I'd be honored to hear more. I took the card. Behind him, Evan looked like a man watching his own life being auctioned off. The investor he had spent months trying to impress had just ignored him in front of everyone and asked to meet me. I slipped the card into my purse. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. I'll be in touch when the project is ready. Adrien looked down at me. Ready to go home? Yes. We turned to leave. Evan's voice cracked behind us. Claire. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. You knew, he said. You brought him here on purpose. Only then did I look back. His face was red now, not with embarrassment alone, but with rage. Chloe stood a few feet away from him, her expression cold and unreadable. No, Evan, I said. You still don't understand. He stared at me. I came here to take my husband home. You were the one who turned it into a performance. His jaw tightened. And for the record, I added, I stopped trying to prove anything to you a long time ago. Then I walked out with Adrien. The doors closed behind us, but not before I heard Chloe's voice slice through the room. You told me she was pathetic. Something shattered. Maybe a glass. Maybe Evan's perfect little story about himself. By morning, the reunion group chat had exploded. Someone had found Adrien's Westbridge faculty page. Someone else had posted an article about the Atlas project. There were screenshots, links, breathless messages, and a sudden flood of apologies from people who had laughed the night before. Daniel wrote 3 paragraphs about how happy he was for me. Rachel sent me a private message saying she had been jealous and didn't mean it. I blocked her. Emma Reed, my college roommate and one of the only people from that part of my life I still loved, called me while I was making coffee. I heard Chloe moved out last night, she said without greeting. Good morning to you too. I'm serious. Her family was supposed to help close Evan's funding round. Now they're pulling out. She told everyone he exaggerated the company's technology and lied about half his connections. I stirred my coffee. A year ago, that news might have made me feel victorious. That morning, I felt almost nothing. Evan and Chloe had built their marriage on ambition, vanity, and the idea that I was proof of what Evan had escaped. Once that illusion cracked, there wasn't much left. Later that day, Evan called me from an unknown number. The moment I heard his voice, I regretted answering. What did you do? He demanded. Excuse me. That professor. Did you tell him to embarrass me? Did you lie to him about me? I almost laughed. You embarrassed yourself. You think someone like him actually loves you? Evan snapped. Does he know you're divorced? Does he know what kind of baggage you are? There it was. The old language. The old cage. I set my coffee down. Adrien knew everything before he married me, I said. The divorce. The affair. The years I spent shrinking myself for a man who never deserved me. Evan breathed hard into the phone. And he still chose me, I continued. Not because I was useful to him. Not because I made him look successful. Because he saw me. Claire. No. Listen carefully. Do not call me again. And you should spend less time worrying about my marriage and more time making sure your company can survive scrutiny. Because if people start asking whether Nexus AI built its product on other people's research, your funding problems will be the least of your worries. I hung up and blocked the number. That should have been the end of it. But Evan's mother had always believed rules were for other people. 2 days later, Diane Foster appeared at the archive department of the Harrington Museum, where I worked. She looked as polished as ever, pearls at her throat, leather handbag in the crook of her arm, judgment on her face. Claire, she said, as if my name tasted bad. Mrs. Foster. Her eyes narrowed. She hated that I no longer called her mom. You've caused enough trouble, she said. I closed the folder in front of me. I'm working. You ruined my son's marriage. You ruined his funding. You humiliated him in front of people who mattered. Evan did that by lying. Diane's face hardened. You were always ungrateful. We let you into our family even though you came from nothing. You couldn't give Evan a child. You couldn't help his career. And now you want revenge because he found a woman who could. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. There had been years when those words would have broken me. Now they only sounded old. Tired. Small. Diane opened her handbag and placed a cashier's check on my desk. $100,000. Leave Professor Hayes, she said. Convince him not to pursue anything against Evan's company. After that, stay away from my son forever. I stared at the check. Then I picked it up. Diane's mouth curved with satisfaction. I tore it in half. Then in quarters. Then I dropped the pieces into the trash. Her face went white. You little. No, I said quietly. She froze. I stood. I am not something Evan can throw away and then buy back when he gets scared. I am not a stain on his life. I am not a problem for you to solve with a check. Diane's hand trembled around her purse strap. And one more thing, I said. If Evan, Chloe, or anyone in your family contacts me again, I will send everything I know about Nexus AI's use of Adrien's research to Westbridge's legal department, Halden Capital, and every investor whose name I can find. You wouldn't dare. I looked at her. I'm not the woman you remember. For the first time since I had known her, Diane Foster had nothing to say. She left with her pearls, her fury, and the remains of her confidence. That night, I told Adrien what had happened. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, his expression was calm, but his eyes were cold. I should have acted sooner, he said. This isn't your fight. He reached across the table and took my hand. Claire, anyone who tries to hurt you makes it my fight. The next morning, Adrien contacted Westbridge's technology transfer office and requested a formal review of the overlap between Nexus AI's core system and the published Atlas research. Within a week, Westbridge brought in an independent analyst. The report that came back was formal, technical, and devastating. It compared Nexus AI's system architecture to published work from the Atlas project. The similarities were not vague. They were specific, structural, and impossible to explain away. Once the report became public, the story moved fast. By noon, tech reporters had picked it up. Within 48 hours, it had moved from niche tech blogs to national business outlets. By the end of the week, Halden Capital suspended all talks with Nexus AI, 2 major clients froze their contracts, and Westbridge's attorneys sent a formal notice. A week after moving out, Chloe filed for divorce and released a statement saying she had been misled. Evans' road to an IPO collapsed before it had even truly begun. I asked Adrien only once if he had done it to destroy Evan. Adrien took a sip of coffee, calm as ever. I sent the evidence to the people who had the right to know, he said. I didn't destroy him, Claire. I just stopped protecting the lie he built his company on. For the first time in years, I slept deeply. While Evan's world collapsed, mine began to open. A month later, Dr. Warren, the director of the Harrington Museum Archives, walked into my restoration room with a folder in his hand and a smile he couldn't hide. The Department of Cultural Affairs approved the Digital Preservation Initiative, he said. And they want you to lead it. I stared at him. Me? You wrote that proposal months ago, Claire, he said. It was sitting in a pile until the right people finally paid attention. AI-assisted restoration of damaged manuscripts, historical maps, and weathered inscriptions. It's innovative, practical, and exactly what the city needs. My hands tightened around the folder. For years, I had worked quietly in the back rooms of museums and archives, repairing what time had almost erased. I loved the work, but I had never imagined anyone outside those rooms would care. Dr. Warren's smile softened. They're also partnering us with Westbridge's Center for Artificial Intelligence. I knew what that meant. Adrien. That evening, when I asked him, he didn't deny it. I mentioned your proposal during a cultural technology roundtable, he said. That's all. You opened the door. No, he said. You built the door. I only pointed people toward it. That was Adrien. He never stood in front of my light and called it his own. He stood beside me and made sure no one could ignore it. For the next 18 months, the project consumed my life. We scanned damaged letters written during the Civil War, reconstructed weathered cemetery inscriptions, restored old maps eaten through by mold, and rebuilt faded museum records that had been unreadable for decades. Adrien's team built the models. My team supplied the history, the texture, the human meaning. We fought with corrupted data, broken equipment, impossible deadlines, and donors who wanted pretty headlines without understanding the years of labor behind them. But slowly, page by page, inscription by inscription, the past began to speak again. For the first time, I understood what it felt like to be respected not as someone's wife, not as someone's failure, not as someone's cautionary tale, but as myself. Our first public demonstration changed everything. On a giant screen inside the museum auditorium, we displayed a 19th-century diary that had been almost destroyed by water damage. Brown stains swallowed entire sentences. Ink had blurred into shadows. Then the AI model processed it. Line by line, the words returned. The room went silent. An elderly woman in the front row began to cry. The diary had belonged to her great-great-grandmother. After that, the press came. Then grants. Then national attention. Within another year, our work won the National Cultural Heritage Innovation Award. At the ceremony, I stood under bright lights, holding the award with both hands. I saw Adrien in the audience. He was not taking credit. He was simply watching me with the quiet pride of a man who had always known I could stand there. In my speech, I thanked my team, the museum, Westbridge, and the families who trusted us with their history. Then I said, and I want to thank my husband, Adrien Hayes. Not for saving me, because I was never a woman who needed saving. But for seeing me clearly when I had forgotten how to see myself. The applause came like rain. That night, we went home instead of attending the after-party. Adrien cooked pasta in our small kitchen. I opened a bottle of wine. We ate barefoot at the counter, laughing like two students who had gotten away with something. Later, he gave me a small box. Inside was a brass book embosser engraved with my initials. CB. For your collection, he said. And for every book you save from being forgotten. I touched the letters with my thumb. I have something for you too, I said. I handed him a folded sheet of paper. He opened it. For the first time since I had known him, Adrien Hayes, brilliant, composed, impossible to rattle Adrien, went completely still. It was a pregnancy report. 6 weeks. His eyes filled before he could speak. Claire, he whispered. We're having a baby. I nodded. He pulled me into his arms so carefully, as if I had become something sacred. For years, Diane Foster had made me feel defective because I hadn't given Evan a child. Doctors later told me stress could do cruel things to the body. Living in constant judgment had done more damage than I understood. But in a home built on peace, respect, and love, life had come quietly back to me. Our son, Noah, was born the following spring. Adrien became the kind of father who studied baby sleep patterns like a research grant and sang off-key lullabies with academic seriousness. I returned to work when I was ready, not when guilt or pressure told me to. We built a life where love was not a cage, but a set of wings. Years passed. My project became a national center. Our technology spread to museums, libraries, schools, and cultural institutions across the country. People called me an expert, a director, a founder. I accepted the titles, but I never let them define me. I knew exactly who I was. A woman who had been underestimated. A woman who had walked out of humiliation and into her own name. Years later, I heard through Emma that Evan had remarried quietly and had a son. I didn't ask for details. His life was no longer a place I visited. Then one Saturday afternoon, I saw him again at a museum education event for children. Noah was 6 and dragging Adrien toward an exhibit on ancient maps. I was speaking with a donor when I heard someone say my name. Evan stood a few feet away. He looked older than he should have. The expensive watch was gone. So was the easy arrogance. Beside him stood a little boy clutching a worn backpack. The boy looked 4, maybe 5. My son, Evan said awkwardly. Ben. The boy smiled shyly. I smiled back. Hi, Ben. Evan looked at the banners hanging above us. My name was printed there as founder of the Preservation Center. Your work is everywhere now, he said. It took a lot of people. He nodded, as if he knew I would say that. I'm working in logistics now, he said. It's honest work. Not glamorous. That's all right. He looked down. My mother died 2 years ago. Before she passed, she said she was sorry for how she treated you. I said nothing. Some apologies arrive too late to change the past. That does not make them meaningless, but it does make them lighter than people hope. Evan swallowed. I was cruel to you, he said. I thought your quietness meant you were small. I thought because you didn't fight for attention, you didn't deserve it. His voice broke. I was wrong. I looked at him for a long moment. Once, I had imagined this apology. I had imagined it would make me feel powerful. But standing there, with Adrien laughing across the room as Noah tried to explain an exhibit to him, I felt only peace. I know, I said. Evan nodded. Then, just as I turned to leave, he asked the question that had probably haunted him for years. Claire. I paused. If I hadn't divorced you, he said, would that have been me standing beside you now? I looked at him. Not with anger. Not with pity. With truth. No, I said. Because even if you had stayed, you would have only wanted a smaller version of me. Adrien loved the woman I was becoming. You only loved the woman you could control. His face crumpled slightly. Behind me, Adrien called my name. I turned. He was standing by the museum doors with Noah on his shoulders, smiling at me like I was still the best thing he had ever found. I walked toward them. Once, Evan had told me no one would want me after him. He had been wrong. But the greatest victory was not that another man wanted me. The greatest victory was that I had finally wanted myself. I had walked into that reunion to take my husband home. I had no idea that one sentence would mark the beginning of my real life. One sentence. One turn. And I never looked back.